see a couple of flaws here at the setup. One is you can see that the golfer is really kind of tilted a little bit towards the target line, and we need to get him to tilt it away. We'd like the belt line to be kind of on that angle there, and he's kind of on that angle. So we're going to work on his setup a little bit. The other thing you'll notice is that he's kind of bow-legged setup. We'd like to have his knees a little less flexed and feeling that the weight is more to the insides of the feet. Right now the knees are outside the toe line. That's going to have the weight on the wrong side of the foot and make it harder to transfer the weight. Let's watch the takeaway here at this angle. Notice he's getting his wrist set pretty good, at least in his practice swing. Now let's see what he does in his real swing. He's going to move up, same kind of setup. Now we're going to move into the impact. There we go. Taking the club back. Another practice swing. My goodness. Okay, now here he goes. Taking the club back, getting a fairly early wrist hinge. Notice that the right elbow's kind of pulling out away. Notice now that he shifted all of his weight to the outside of his trail foot. He's rotated his shoulders pretty good. He's going to come down to the shot, maintaining pretty good club lag there. Driving his right knee. One of the things we look for is when the left hand is about mid-thigh, the club shaft should be parallel to the right shin. And he's getting close to that point right there. And notice that the arm and the club shaft make a straight line, except we see the club bending like that. That means he's decelerating with his left side, and he's going to kind of flip at the club. Let's see what happens here. Going to move into the, see how he flips under? Right there, the right hand is underneath the golf club instead of above the golf club. We need to be able to see the fingers of the left hand at this position, and we need to make sure that the hands are as far away from his body as they were here. See how far he is? So he should be at least out here as he's coming through his swing, but he doesn't even get to that point. He pulls in and ends up kind of closed and stuck. So we want him to create a nice wider swing with his arms. Let's look at a couple of things here. Let's look at the wrist hinge, which never really happens quite as much as he's able to do. The wrist hinge is one of the spots we store maximum amount of power. And notice at this point right here, there has been virtually no wrist hinging at all, and not much of the right shoulder rotation. See how the right shoulder isn't really getting around behind him? So those two things together are creating a problem. I'd like to see as his hands pass the thigh that he ends up with the club head sitting out here parallel to the ground, pointing at the target line and over the toes. That's not what's happening here. And as he continues on back, notice that we're not getting a whole lot of right shoulder training. Everybody gets the right shoulder in behind his ear to way up here. And at this point now, we still don't have even close to a 90-degree angle. But more importantly, he's lost a lot of his spine angle. He's kind of stood up a little bit. Then as he comes forward, what we'll notice is that he's going to kind of lean forward a little bit first. He does get a good hip action there. But then the hips just sort of quit turning, and it's all shoulders. And that's why we're seeing the left arm leave his body right there. See the gap that is generating right? In fact, I'll open this up a little bit so you can see real closely. See how that gap is generating there? And notice that the shoulders have turned well past the hip line. We need that to happen in reverse so that the structure of the triangle of the arms and chest can stay intact on through to the finish. And at the finish, you can see that instead of having a nice straight line from the ear to the hip to the knee, we're at quite a bit of an angle. See that? So we would like a straight line so that there's a little bit more thrust of the hips in front. One of the things we notice right away at setup is that we need to get the left hip pushed a little bit more towards the target. That'll get his shoulders at a little bit more of an angle. What you can see is that the right hand is considerably lower than the left hand, but the left shoulder isn't that much higher than the right shoulder. So we'd like to get him with that little push of the hips so that we've got kind of a tilt here on that side, so everything's kind of tilted a little bit to the left. Let's watch the takeaway. Here's how early he gets the wrist hinge. Again, a little late wrist hinge. What we're seeing is the elbow is pulling up. Notice how the elbow is coming out away from the body, and it's getting higher and higher. We'd like to see the forearm stay about parallel if we can. And here's another example where, because we're pulling that right arm in, the left arm is starting to bend a lot, and we're not getting any wrist hinge. If right about here, right here, he would take the time to push down on the heel pad of the left hand and get the golf club set at that angle, he would create a width, so we would have this nice angle there, and then we move that whole unit as a piece on the backswing. So you can see that doesn't happen. What he does is he ends up with a nice straight line. His left forearm and the club are still on a straight line. As he goes up, he gets a little hinge there, but then starts to collapse where both arms are bent. So now he doesn't have the width to get back to the golf swing, get back to the golf ball. So now he's going to move, and he's noticed the head is leaning into the shot. Now his head is past the golf ball, and he's hitting down on the ball, but his head is so far past that he's going to chunk it a lot. And again, we don't see any lower body action here. The head and stuff is moved well past the hips, and we'd like to see a connection of the right hip and right elbow coming through together. And you can see, once again, we don't have a nice straight line, ear, shoulder, knee, because the knee and the hip are way back here, and we're leaning forward. More sand. Fell off that one.
Yep. Big time.
I'd like to make a couple of changes with this golfer. Change number one, we got too much flex in the knees. We'd like the knees to not be past the toes, and you can see there's quite a bit of flex there. All he needs to do is unlock the knees, and he'll be in a better, stronger position. That'll help a lot. We're also playing a style of golf called natural golf or single plane golf, in which case we'd want the club shaft running up to the lead armpit, so his hands are a little low. You either want them straight down with a nice L, kind of like that to that, or you want them high. You can't go in between. So let's clear this all out, and let's watch what happens on the takeaway. What we're going to try to study is, how does he do on the club shaft? Now notice the club shaft is almost perfectly bisecting his spine, halfway up and halfway down. Nice job. Now he's keeping his hands on the plane. Pretty good. Let's see if he drops him back down in again. See, that's dropping the club. So he's really doing a nice job of generating a single plane swing, and he's turning into the shot pretty good. I'd rather see the right knee move a little closer so we don't see as much air between the legs as we see there, and that'll keep the ball from pushing out to the right as much as he does. But not a bad swing. Notice the club is exiting almost parallel to the swing plane that he established with his golf shaft setup. So if we can make just a couple of little tiny changes, we're going to get some more power out of this swing, and he'll be a happier golfer. He did really good, actually, here. What we see right away with this golfer is that he has a tendency to collapse his left knee on the takeaway right here. See that? That was collapsing. That's not generating any power. What we'd like to do is, if the left leg comes up a little, left heel comes up a little bit, that's fine, but we can't let the left knee make it all the way to the right knee. We've got to have some gap there to have some power. Now he does plant it pretty good, but then he's not able to drive through enough with the right side. Now this is a huge improvement over where he was just a few weeks ago. Watch the right arm rotate through the shot. Very nice. All we need to do, and we're going to draw that mythical line again, we've got to draw that line straight up from the right foot up. We need to get to that line, and that tells us that our momentum went forward. And if I blow this picture up, we'll take a look at his right foot. You can see that the heel is going around behind him, it's not coming up. That heel can never go outside the toes. And by that I mean, and look at the flex in the shaft. The heel has to stay on that line. It can't go behind it. Okay.
Okay, the setup doesn't look too bad here. You can see that the clubs the ball could be a little further forward. It's not quite off the end of the rod. The real problem is going to occur in the downswing because for some reason Dave isn't using any legs. Let's watch the takeaway. Good turn. Almost got the club parallel to the ground. The left wrist looks pretty flat. It's getting a good rotation there. You can see the legs are staying nice and solid. The left wrist is a little over cupped at this point. I'd like to see it a little flatter. That'll tend to produce a bit of a slice. But you can see from right here, there is no movement at all of the right knee towards the left knee. The knee is just kind of sitting there a little bit. Now and you can see the shaft now is front loading, is loading on the way down, and the club face is wide open. That tells me that he's losing lots of power right in here because there's been no weight shift at all. And you can see right there, the club is actually flexing forward instead of backwards. It's releasing already. At this point now, that there should be a line from this shoulder parallel to that leg. That's where the club and the arm should be, and the knee should be on that line. So we're not getting any forward drive at all with the lower body. We're going to go right on through to the finish. You can see right in there that he's pulled his arms in real tight against his body. He's flaring out. He can't get any length. He's not going down that road that we talked about that you turn left on when you get down to the end of it and rotating through. Now, he's got great rotation. We saw that last week, but this week he's not able to get the right ear, right shoulder, right hip, right knee all on the line. The right ear made it. The right almost made it. The right shoulder almost made it. You can see the right hip is way back where the belt loop is, and the right knee hasn't come through at all. That's what he had going last week where he was hitting the ball so well, and not this week.
Here we have a golfer that's tending to exaggerate getting the head back. What we'd like to have is the head back over the back thigh, and you can see he's well beyond that. So he could actually come up a little straighter than that, and I'm sure he's going to be a little more comfortable. But the key here is that he's found something that's working for him. You're going to watch the takeaway. His head stays back pretty nicely, and then he moves forward past the thigh. That's the killer. We got to keep the head past, so wherever he is here, that's where we want his head never to pass that line. See what he does here. See, he passes the line. So he gets too far in front with the head. But he's making it work. He's turning through the shot nicely, and he's ending up in that balanced position. So sometimes it's more important to get where you want to go than to start in the right spot. So while he's got a few technical errors back here, I think we're going to keep building on that and not work on it too much because he's getting a great rotation through the swing to a nice finish. Individualized swing, sometimes they're the best. Ask Arnold Palmer.